Hello, Bobcat fans, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Bobcat Outsider. You know the Bobcat Outsider is the YouTube channel where you can go to find preseason audio from press conferences and interviews of players and the coaches. And now we're going to try a new thing during the season. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the Bobcats and how they look and what we think of them coming out of their previous game and going into their next game, and just kind of give you a fan perspective. Just so you know, decidedly, I am an amateur. So everything I say, I understand. I'm not a guru, and so don't, be gentle with your comments because I know that I don't know everything. I'm just giving you my opinion and my perspective as an amateur and as a fan. This week on the Bobcat Outsider, we're going to talk about last week's matchup of the Bobcats against Texas Tech and this coming week's matchup with the Redhawks of Southeast Missouri, better known as SEMO. So first off, I want to go back and take a look back. What did I take away from the Texas Tech game? Texas Tech is really fast. That was my biggest takeaway. It was just really hard to keep up with their speed. Not only is their team speed really fast, but their speed of play. I've never seen a hurry-up offense that's quite that fast. Now, they didn't always use that. They came out in the first two drives and really just hammered over and over and over all these plays. And then they kind of slowed down the pace, and maybe that was to kind of build that anxiety up of like, oh my goodness, is this going to last forever? When, on the other side, they know like, okay, we're going to kind of do this, and then we're going to settle in, so don't worry about it. But, if you're the guy that's getting hit at this pace, and it's a pace you've never seen in your life, you might be like, how long can I really endure? And that might kind of break you down mentally a little bit. I'm just a guess, but I'm thinking that might have something to do with why they did it that way. That was my big takeaway on the side of like, oh, what did they do good and what did we do bad? There's going to be a lot of talk, I'm sure, this week of like, oh, we look terrible in this or we did that bad. And I'd prefer to kind of talk about the positives about the players and things that I'm looking forward to on the team rather than all the criticism. That just comes so easily and on the Bobcat Outsider. It's a fan perspective, and so as a fan, I want to build the team up. So what were the positive takeaways of the players during this game? So first of all, S1Ep1 is just a tough son of a gun. I'm just so proud of how hard he ran and just the effort and the relentlessness that he had and just the heart that he ran with. His heart reminds me of Chad Newell. Obviously, he's a very different type of running back than Chad Newell was, but he just has that heart and that intensity to just keep going regardless of when the chips are down. Ryan Lonergan, I was so happy because before the game, I was kind of looking at it like, man, that guy, I thought as a true freshman, he could really come in and make an impact if he's strong enough. So I don't think that Jeff Choate wants to roll out a receiving tight end that can't really block in the run game because he doesn't want to have a different package, I imagine. He doesn't want to have a different package for the run versus the pass because then you're just basically tipping your hand every time that you pull out the different package. So I was really interested to see if Ryan Lonergan could block in the run game, and I wasn't even sure that he would travel. Turns out he blocked very well. I caught at least one play where I specifically spotted Ryan Lonergan blocking really well, sealing the end, and opening it up for the runner. So I think if he can do that and continue that on, I think he's just so athletic that I think that he'll be able to be a receiving and catch receiving and a blocking tight end, which would be huge. Obviously, Ryan Davis did a great job blocking as well, and he has the starting job as of now. But I think my guess is Jeff Choate wanted to see a little bit of what does Ryan Lonergan look like out there. Jared Padmos ended the game with the second longest punt average in the country, and Montana State ended with the third longest net punting, or the third highest net punting. I attribute both of those actually to Jared for the most part. If you watch the Southeast Missouri game from last week, that's our upcoming opponent, they played Southern Illinois, and the Southern Illinois kicker had one kick that he just absolutely launched. It was a great punt, except he outkicked his coverage. There was a huge return, and the net punt there was, maybe 15 or 20 yards. So that net punting, I do want to say kudos to the cover team. Obviously, they did a great job. But that net punting, I think, is also a statistic that you can really attribute to a kicker who knows how to give it enough loft when they're going to give it that kind of distance. Another thing I want to mention about this is, Jared Padmos is going against a Power 5 school where not all of the rest of the punters in the FCS are doing that in the opening week 0 and week 1. I saw the pass rush get home a little bit. It was so hard because Texas Tech was getting the ball out so fast. But Troy Anderson got home. He actually hit the quarterback. It ended up just being a hurry because Bowman, who was the Texas Tech quarterback, was able to release the ball, get it out in time, and but it ended up being a nice hurry that was negated, unfortunately, by an illegal substitution foul. So the next thing I want to talk about is a huge bright spot in this game. This was what I call the series of greatness. And this was not just the offensive series, but the defensive play that set up this offensive series. The defensive play initially was kind of a broken coverage or a broken run fit. I don't remember if it was a run or a pass play. But the Texas Tech player that had the ball was going downfield and it looked like he was going to score. It looked like Jaquay Allen had a chance to tackle him, but instead of just going for the tackle, he got his fingers in there and ripped the ball out. And not only did he get the forced fumble, but he got the fumble recovery. He got it in the end zone, which meant that they had the touchback. They had the ball on the 20. Getting the ball back on the 20 instead of giving them 7 points, that's basically a 14-point swing. So awesome play there. So then the Bobcats get on offense. They start to drive down the field, or they start to try to drive down the field, and they get stumped on third. So they go and they get into a punt look. Well, they successfully convert the 4th down on a fake punt. That sets up a beautiful pass. Bauman stands in the pocket, delivers a strike to Kevin Cassis, who goes up, climbs the ladder, and makes a circus catch. Bauman was a little bit affected by the pressure, but he's literally being hit as he releases. He still delivers. Cassis is still able to go up and make that circus catch to bring that ball in, and just a beautiful play. And then the next play, or a couple plays later, a nice long pass to Coy Steele that's just right on target. Coy's right in the middle of their pass defense, able to just kind of find a hole in there and just exploit that for a touchdown. That I was very happy with. All of that being said, I wish that the game would have been more competitive. And I know a lot of people are going to say, hey, it's Texas Tech. Give them a break. This is a Power 5 school. This is a Big 12 team. But I want to give kind of my argument for why we should be competing with these teams. There are a lot of teams in the FCS that can compete with these Power 5 teams. And we're talking about ranked Power 5 teams. Northern Iowa goes into Iowa State and takes them to triple overtime. Iowa State's ranked number 20 in the country in the FBS. Northern Iowa is only ranked number 21 in the FCS, but they're able to take that game into triple overtime, and that just tells you what that competitiveness, and it's not like Iowa State's going to take them for granted because they've been beaten by Northern Iowa in the past, so they're not taking them for granted. They're coming in, they're showing up and competing, and you still see Northern Iowa able to put on a very competitive game. I think if a top 4 team goes into, and this is what I'm trying to get at here, is Montana State, I would love to see as a top 4 team in the country really seriously competing for national championships. I know we've kind of been rebuilding. We're in year 4, and I think we can start to expect that what we're seeing now is going to be about as good as we're going to get. We're not just going to continue getting better and better forever. We have all of the guys that we expected to get in. Maybe Choate will get a little bit more experience under his belt. Maybe he'll have a staff with a little bit more experience as time goes by, and maybe we will continue to see improvement. But I think in year 4, you really should see a level of success that you really want to see for your team. For me, that's a top 4 team in the country. I know those are high expectations. But so to get back to what I was saying, I think that a top 4 team in the FCS, a team like James Madison, North Dakota State, Eastern Washington, UC Davis, goes in and plays that game very competitively. I think they go in, give them a scare, and maybe win the game. I would give North Dakota State the edge in that game. And I think if we want to be a top team, we have to have those kind of expectations, and we have to go in with that kind of fight. Now, my initial take on this was that I felt like Choate was pulling his punches because ahead of time he had said, look, no one expects us to go in and win this football game. All the pressure's on Texas Tech. It's, and then after the game, he said some things like, we didn't open up the playbook completely. This SEMO game is a very important game, and we don't want to, tip our hand. initially, I really took that to mean that he was pulling his punches and he was just using it as basically a third scrimmage. Some people that they think that that's fine. That's okay. You don't have to agree with me. But in my opinion, it's very disappointing if a coach goes into a football game not playing to win it, because you just don't have that competitive fire that you need. When North Dakota State went into their first FBS game, they didn't go in saying, well, we're going to save it for later and try to come up big a little bit later in the year. They said, we're going to go in and we're going to show them what we can do. And they won. I don't know if it was their very first FBS game, but look, they've won all but like one of their last 6 or 7 FBS games. We're not talking about group of 5 teams. We're talking about Power 5 teams that they're going against. Teams like Iowa, Iowa State, big deal teams. Kansas State, when they were, I think, ranked number 11 in the country. If you want to be competitive at the highest level in the FCS, you have to be competitive against teams that are in the middle of the Power 5. For sure, you got to be competitive. That being said, this was the first game. There were some first game jitters that came out. The team did very well in a lot of respects, but it's the first game, and it can be kind of weird in the first game of the season. It was Bauman's first game as a starter, period, and he had to go up against a team that's made to stop the pass. A Big 12 team. They're the whole idea of that conference is just score. So they're going to be using the pass a lot, and he, kind of ran into a little bit of a buzzsaw there. He still delivered on a couple nice passes, but first game jitters, that sort of stuff. And I think they did a good job. I want to be clear. I don't think that Choate was pulling his punches. I would have been disappointed if he was. But I went back and watched the game again yesterday, and I saw him pulling in Troy Anderson an amount that you just wouldn't be doing if you weren't really, really trying to win the football game. And he did. I was like, where are all the trick plays? He did pull out some trick plays. They had the double pass and the fake punt, stuff like that. I would have expected to see about 4 trick plays, but at least they were doing that, and they were trying to get Troy into the mix on offense too, which tells me they were playing to win. So that was my initial hot take, and it's not my take anymore. I think they were playing to win, and I certainly hope that they were. Texas Tech really fast. Kudos to them. They didn't take Montana State for granted. They said, look, we're going to show up and we're going to compete because we know that this team is not going to roll over for us. So kudos to them, hats off, and on to Southeast Missouri. All right, this week the Cats will be taking on the number 12 ranked Southeast Missouri State Redhawks from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Jeff Choate's quote about this game is, let's be frank, this is a big game. And I 100% agree. The Bobcats come into the game ranked number 13, so this is a top 15 matchup. You don't get a lot of those every week. So this will be very exciting. They are the 2018 Ohio Valley Conference runners-up to Jacksonville State. Coach Choate describes them as a tough, hard-nosed, and confident team. Their offense averaged last year 37 points per game. Their O-line is mostly new, so they have one returning starter on the O-line and the rest are new. But don't be fooled that this is not a bunch of kind of amateur guys. I watched their game from last week. They're all pushing 300 pounds at every position. They're at or above 300. And it's not the bad 300, it's the good 300. They got a lot of get off, they got a lot of push, and they're going to be a good offensive line. So we can't really fool ourselves saying, hey, we got a great D line, they're just going to smoke them. This will be a good matchup, actually. The team is led by the Ohio Valley All-Conference quarterback Daniel Santa Catarina. It's kind of funny when they say his name because it's so long, in between plays they're trying to say, oh, and Santa Catarina did this. A lot of times they shorten it to Santa. So deep ball, Santa, and then they move on. So it sounds like Santa's out there playing football. But Choate compares him to a point guard who just wants to have the ball in his hands in the closing moments of the game. He's a very competitive guy. He's a dual threat. He can hurt you with his feet, and he does, and he did last week. And he can hurt you through the air. He's got a couple of receivers. Number 6 for the Redhawks is Christian Wilkerson, who is a third-team preseason All-American wide receiver. And then I think the other one is number 3, who was, I think, an all-conference receiver. They are just very good. And he's confident in them. As Choate says, he'll throw the back shoulder, he'll throw a 50-50 ball, and they'll come up with it. And they do frequently come up with it. So he's not afraid to throw that 50-50. I think our defensive backs will be excited about that. They're excited at the chance to just go up and high point the ball and steal it. Like they say, when the ball's in the air, it's ours. So we want to see those guys go out and really show Southeast Missouri what they can do. That being said, they're going against a very good football team. Their inside linebacker is the preseason All-American, Zach Hall. He was the 2018 Buck Buchanan winner. Jeff Choate calls him a hit and fit linebacker. The Buck Buchanan Award tells you all you need to know. He had 8 forced turnovers last year, and he had 168 tackles to lead the FCS. They got a running back, Zion Custis, who I noticed, he's got great bounce back. When the hole closes up, he just bounces back, finds another hole, he makes the cut, and he's very fast. He also played very physically. I think he's 180 pounds, but he just played much bigger than his size in a very similar way to Isaiah Ifanse. Now, he's not as physical or as hard at hitting as Isaiah Ifanse, but he's just much stronger than he looks at that 180 pounds. SEMO led the FCS in turnover margin at a remarkable plus 24 turnovers. Compare that to the Bobcats, who led our conference in turnover margin, but we only had 10, so they had plus 10. So they were over twice our margin. We still were number 16, I think, in the country in turnover margin, but that just shows you how good these guys are at getting turnovers and at protecting the ball. The defense returns 10 starters. Here are some of my observations from the Week 1 matchup of Southeast Missouri versus Southern Illinois. They did seem to have, early on in the game, a little bit of susceptibility to the edge run. I saw some kind of boundary side or short side edge running that they just didn't account for, and Southern Illinois had some success. They ended up going away from that, and I didn't notice why it was or if they were stopping that or what it was, but there was some susceptibility there. They used some tempo, some real serious high tempo to score their second touchdown. I also noticed that they bring a lot of pressure and they bring a lot of fake pressure. So I might have said this earlier, but they'll do 3 down linemen, and then they'll bring someone up in that buck position, or similar to the buck position for us, where you can either fall back into coverage or rush the passer, or they'll bring guys into the gaps between the down linemen to show blitz or to actually blitz, and you never really know what they're doing. That'll be a challenge for our young quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how he does against that. My key matchup for this game is going to be how our defense does against their offense, and more specifically, how our defensive line does against that newer offensive line that they have. I got to say, they really were clicking on all cylinders when they were playing against Southern Illinois, and there's no reason to think that because they're new that they're inexperienced or not very good. Like I said, they had a lot of get off. They were really fast and able to get a lot of push. So we have great guys on that D-line, and I can't wait to see how they'll do against them. But certainly no push over there. The key for SEMO in this game, I think, is going to be getting that ball out quickly to negate that MSU pass rush. If they can do that in their passing game and make the MSU defensive backs defend in kind of more of a press man type coverage, then they'll be able to kind of make that competition between their All-Americans, All-Conference guys and ours, and we'll see who comes out the better. My key for MSU to win this football game is to get that balanced offense rolling. We know that MSU has a proven ability to run between the tackles. They do it just about every football game. But can they exploit that edge rush susceptibility that I think I spotted there last week? If they can do that, and if they can get that passing game going, if being in his home stadium and having the crowd kind of quiet down when we're on offense, if Casey Bauman can kind of settle in and really start to get into a rhythm with those passes, then I think that opens up more of the run game and just gets that diversity just is so hard to defend. And so we'll see if MSU can get that balance going. The defense has to generate turnovers. They absolutely have to, because protect the ball as much as we can. They will get turnovers because they're just that kind of football team, SEMO that is. And so we got to get them to, and we know we can do it. We just gotta, go out there and demonstrate that. We were +1 in turnover margin. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. That's a big plus, or big positive takeaway from the Texas Tech football game. We were +1 against Texas Tech, which is very good. So if we can, get a turnover or two and try to protect the ball the best we can. And then the other key is limit those explosive plays. This team is very explosive, and if we can limit those explosive plays, be competitive in the turnover margin, then I think that we can give the offense that chance to kind of get in there and keep up that score with those guys, because they're going to get their points. But if we can, follow those keys and get that done, I think that we have a good chance of beating the number 12 team in the country, ranked one place above us. So there's a couple funny connections in this football game. Southeast Missouri plays in Houck Stadium. So if you needed another reason to hate these guys and go in and want to beat them, they play in Houck Stadium. They last week in Illinois State, they faced a free safety named Quay. I mean, what are the chances, right? So they'll be facing another, a Jacques Quay this week. And they were against Quay Brown last week in Southern Illinois. So this is going to be a very hard-fought game, and it has very important implications in the postseason. This is going to set where the OVC is compared to the Big Sky. It's going to tell us whether we're going to be up there, maybe a top 10 team, maybe fighting for a seed in the top 8. Or if SEMO is, And this will tell us kind of what we can expect going through this season. This will be one of our toughest games this season. And we have a lot of expectations, and we'll learn a lot from it. The outcome of this game will set those expectations for us. So thank you for watching the inaugural episode of the Bobcat Outsider. Do you want to weigh in on Bobcat football in next week's episode? If you do, leave a message in the comments or hit me up on Bobcat Nation. My handle on Bobcat Nation is DriscollCat. You can also find me on Twitter at Shane Driscoll. Okay, now for the plug of the week. If you haven't listened to the R&R Catcast, be sure to check them out. I actually started this channel basically as a spinoff from the R&R Catcast because they asked me to kind of check out some of the preseason practices, the fall camp, and I went down and decided to pick up some audio, decided to start getting some video, and that's kind of how this whole thing started. So, I got to give them a lot of credit. They came up with the name, the Bobcat Outsider. But be sure to check out their podcast this week because they're going to have Travis Lulay on, who is just an all-time great. If you weren't here when Travis Lulay, or if you weren't a fan during the Travis Lulay years, you got to go back and look at some of those football games. Travis Lulay was the guy who ended the streak that the Grizz had, the win streak they had against the Bobcats. He played professional ball in Canada for a long time, had many Grey Cup wins, or at least 1 or 2 Grey Cup wins. But really nice guy, and they did a great interview with him, and you don't want to miss this one. Be sure to check back later this week for more Bobcat info. The Bobcat Outsider is not sponsored by or affiliated with MSU Athletics or the Bobcat Insider. The Bobcat Outsider is sponsored by Adventures of Shane and Laura, which is the YouTube channel my wife and I use to share our adventures around Montana. We go on hikes, backpacking trips. We've stayed in Forest Service cabins and lookouts. And we just kind of share those adventures. We travel mostly around Montana, but we've kind of extended beyond to going up into Banff National Park and down into South Padre Island. We invite you guys to check that out. I'm going to leave a link to subscribe in the end screen of this video. So thanks again, guys, for checking out the Bobcat Outsider. We hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what you thought about it in the in the comments below. And until next time, go Cats.